the next item in our agenda, whereby we shall have Corentam, who's going to be giving us some introduction on the ElectriFI. Corentam Bile is a senior investment officer. He's an impact specialist, so he wants to see renewable energy projects advance in any country. So in Eswatini, we are so happy and proud that he is here, and he's gonna be telling us more about ElectriFI. Can we welcome him?
Hello everyone, it's an absolute pleasure to be in this beautiful country. Again, it's my second time and always stunned to see the hospitality and the beautiful landscapes and the progress that are being made to advance the renewable energy projects. I won't speak too much about myself, but just a few words. I'm an impact investor at heart. What does it mean? Is that I'm really passionate about finding innovative and inspiring entrepreneurs and businesses that have at heart to solve some of our world challenges, and very particularly in the renewable energy space. I've been working in this space for many, many years, and about 4 years ago, I joined ElectriFI, which is an EU-funded fund that is investing in renewable energy projects or companies, primarily in sub-Saharan Africa. So just for you to understand very quickly who we are, and this is a bit technical, but just so you understand where we sit. It's a fund that is based in Brussels, Belgium. It's 100% funded by the European Union, so we manage public funding. And it's a fund that is managed by a management company called ElectriFI MC. And we were started in 2016 under the initiative of 15 development agencies in Europe. You might recognize a few names here, the Dutch FMO, we have BIO in Belgium, FinFund, etc. And aside from ElectriFI, we also manage another fund in the sustainable agriculture. So who we are. As I mentioned, we have a very specific mandate. We are looking for increased or improved access to renewable energy. What do? We are looking for interesting and innovative companies or projects that have this mission, so to increase access to renewable energy. We help them, we support the entrepreneurs by providing the necessary capital. And I'll get to what kind of capital do we provide in a few slides. We only invest in the private sector. This is very important because I'm speaking also to all the entrepreneurs or private companies here present. We invest only in these private sector companies. And in terms of business models around the renewable energy access, we usually can categorize them around 4 main types. The mini-grid companies. So if you're not familiar with mini-grids, it's like a small utility of a few tens of kilowatts powering villages or communities in certain rural areas. And I'll give you an example of some portfolio companies in a minute. And we also support what we call the CNI companies. So these are companies actually providing solar solution to SMEs, to small factories, so that they can rely on more sustainable electricity or be on self-consumption. And we also invest in the so-called solar home system companies. So one of them is quite renowned in Mozambique, Solar Works, which might ring a bell. We were actually one of the first investors in solar works a few years ago, provided a large loan and helped them to actually achieve tens of thousands of new connections with the small solar kits that they were distributing in rural Mozambique. And lastly, we also support other business models related to renewable energy, which can be included in the electric mobility or productive use. We can also include clean cooking, for example, or solar water irrigation, amongst others. So today, ElectriFI manages a portfolio of around 253 million euros. That's quite significant funding. And we also organize the funding to different countries, and we call them the country window. And we actually have a small country window for Eswatini of 5 million euros. And so I'm actively looking for interesting investment opportunities. But that gives you an idea on where we work. We don't see that. It's actually quite blurry here, but I'm not sure if from a distance you can see it. Okay. But we have launched country windows to give you some examples in Benin, in Ivory Coast. We have also country windows in Nigeria, but other countries like Zambia, Burundi, Kenya, Uganda, and Mozambique, to name the latest. For ElectriFI, which is managing public funding, it's really important for us that we are able to measure the impact we really have as a mission to accelerate the renewable energy transition in emerging markets, and especially in Africa. To give you some figures, in the last years, we managed to reach 30 million people with improved access to renewable energy, which is quite a significant number. And we are really on the target to double, triple that in the next years. More than 200 megawatts of installed capacity that we help to finance. This is also an important slide to understand, especially for the entrepreneurs interested in looking in accessing finance. I usually say that we are an investor, but we can't do it all. We have a mandate that is also very specific and that tries to be catalytic and providing the necessary investment capital to grow your business to the next stage. So you can see here on this slide, on the chart, actually, that we do not intervene at the very early stages of funding a company. You can see on the left side the incubation period, which would usually be financed by some, let's say, family and friends money, as we say, or grant capital that would help your business to get to a certain commercial traction. So that's not the stage where we intervene, but we invest just after that. Once the company or the project has reached commercial traction, has proven a business model and the technology, then we can look at the opportunity and provide the capital so that the company can grow to scale its operations and access also more commercial funding. Global footprint, so I mentioned already the country windows. We have a portfolio of a bit more than 50 investments today, and this is continuously growing. And as you can see, we are primarily active in sub-Saharan Africa. I just want to pause on I'll pick two examples of investments that we did, so it's quite illustrative to you. So maybe here on the 2021 investments, one that I would like to highlight is on the right-hand side. You can see at the bottom a company called Ares. If you ever happen to travel to Benin in West Africa, I'm pretty certain you can see lots of electrical trucks now with the brand Ares. This is actually a pure off-grid developer, a company that was founded by a Beninese and a French guy, and really wanted to solve some of the problems in Benin. And they are delivering and providing solar solutions to SMEs They're also installing mini grids. It's a full, actually a full set of skills that they have in the sub-region. And so we looked at this company many years ago, but they were quite early stage. They were active for several years. They proved commercial track records, but they really needed capital to expand in other countries, amongst others Burkina Faso or Ivory Coast. And so we, after doing our assessments, made an investment in Ares to help them hire additional staff members, to help them buy additional equipment and scale the operations throughout the country. So to give you an example, at the time they were actually realizing sales of around 1 million euros, and today they're closing the year at close to 10 million. So a very fast scale, also thanks to the funding that we provided. Another example that I would like to highlight here is a mini-grid company. This is actually a company based in India, Husk Power Systems. They're also quite renowned in the space, and they're also expanding very fast in Nigeria. And there, the company was a bit more mature compared to Ares. They had already quite a lot of mini-grids installed in North India, in Uttar Pradesh and Bihar for rural communities. And what they needed here is a long-term debt, basically to de-risk the equity, the capital that was invested by the shareholders. And so we provided this debt to the company, which was $6 million, to help construct about 80 new mini-grids in North India. So that was also quite an achievement for this company. And now they just announced, actually 2 weeks ago, that they raised $40 million of Series D, thanks amongst others to the catalytic investment that we did in this company. A few words on the eligibility criteria and the offering. So I mentioned this already, but we only target private sector companies in the renewable energy space that has as a business model, as I mentioned, renewable energy capacity deployment, solar home systems, mini-grids, solar PV, CNI solutions, but also hydro we can look at as well. The project or the company needs to be commercially viable. So despite the fact that we are funded by a public organization, by the European Union, we are very much commercial investors as well. So we look at what the business model will look like. We challenge you on the commercial viability. We need to make sure that it works. And by the way, this is very important for us because we don't believe in creating impact if you don't have a sustainable, commercially viable business. Track record, I mentioned already, credibility of the team. Perhaps maybe the most important in the end, if we invest in a business, we invest in a team. We need to create a relationship and a partnership with the founders, with the team that we will support in the long term. Lastly, on the offering. So we have 5 million euros available for Eswatini. We can invest in with multiple instruments. That's a bit the luxury that we have as we receive the mandate from the EU. So we can actually directly invest in the capital of a company or a project, or we could also provide loans with multiple tenors. I usually get the question about, okay, how many years, what's the pricing, etc., etc. So that will always be assessed on a case-to-case basis, always be assessed as per what the company or the project can absorb. So if it's the early stages, for example, you won't generate enough cash flow to reimburse the debt. So then we might look at capital, which is more risky, but that would be the adapted instruments. So it could be very different, but equity, debt, working capital, all part of our offering. In terms of ticket size, we can start at 500,000 euros up to, well, 5 million, but let's say we won't invest the whole country window at once. And usually we look at minimum 1 million euros of investments. So that gives you already an idea of the stage of maturity where the company needs to be at. And we can't do it alone, again, because we manage public funding. It's very important that we catalyze also other investments, private investments especially. So we are capped at 50% of the total funding. So if a company is raising 2 million euros or US dollars, we can only do 1 million. Lastly, how do we work? So it's a very typical investment process for people having worked with venture capital investors. This is quite familiar. We start with just a quick screening on high-level information about the project or the business. Does it fit our investment mandate? Usually this is where we can immediately say, okay, it looks too early stage for us. It's not in our scope. And we might guide you to other investors, maybe like the incubations phase. And then we have a 2 steps investment approval. We have a first clearance in principle and then a financial proposal that we need to get approved internally by an investment committee. In between, we have the on-site due diligence, where we spend a bit of time with you on the grounds to meet your customers, to challenge you on the business plan, to make sure that the model is working, is commercially viable. And then once we get the final approval, we move into the contracting phase. So I think that's it, and thank you very much.
Quarantine for that. At least we know that Eswatini has, did you say 5 million euros, which the entrepreneurs can access. That's a good sum of money, and I believe we can benefit from that as a country. Do we have any questions for him? Just 1 or 2? It was clear as mud. Awesome. Okay. Thank you so much. Let's give him a round of applause. I'm sure that he's got his contacts. We can still meet him during the networking session so that you can learn more about the investment he was talking about on ElectriFI. So at this point in time, we are moving to our next roundtable discussion on investment in renewable energy in the energy for energy projects. So this session will be moderated by the one and only Sebastian van Wolf. He's the head of finance and advisory. Yes, I'm introducing you for the last time now. Yeah.
I got to praise you again.
Okay. All right. Otherwise, over to you and your panel.
Thank you. Yes, I have the pleasure of moderating the panel, which I mentioned already this morning. Now we want to talk about the financial sector and what the financial sector should and can do. Let me briefly read out sort of the formal question: how can the financing system further ensure affordable and sustainable energy transition while focusing in on project finance, access to finance, red tape, and trainings delivered to advance access to finance for the private sector in Eswatini? So let me sort of rephrase this a little bit, sort of what the topic of the panel is going to be. I think we're all clear on the overall goal of Eswatini, ensuring affordable and sustainable energy for everyone. We also know that both government with regulation and also the private sector need to work hand in hand here. I think that's also become pretty clear here, moving out of the silos. And now adding to that equation, the financial sector often sits at the decisive switch between regulation, government and the projects. And because they are the ones which need to deliver the actual fuel for the transformation, because they have got the money. And so this is going to be the topic now. We want to discuss this. What is the financial sector already achieving? What can be done more? And what's the additional potential? I would say we just sit here like in a sort of a collegial group and discuss this. Yeah. So I would call one after the other on stage now, just to sit there, take a seat, and then we take it from there. Starting with Wu Zelelo, CEO of Standard Bank Eswatini, at the same time also chair of the Eswatini Bankers Association, plus president of Business Eswatini. So I think give him a hand of applause. Please take a seat. Choose any chair. I'm going to take this one in the end, so wherever you feel comfortable. Inati, also known already, I think to the audience, again, CEO of Business Eswatini, and I'd like to add here also an ex-banker, so you know the financial sector, you know the banks from inside. Welcome on the panel, Inati. Next person I don't need to introduce either, Corentin. We just heard Senior Investment Officer at ElectriFI. Choose a chair where you're feeling comfortable. And then we have Mfo. Where's Mfo? I have not seen you. Ah, there you are, great. Choose a chair. Mfo is consultant of energy partnerships. We will hear more about this. And you're especially implementing the new UNDP Italy energy program, which we want to learn more about from you. Last but not least, my colleague Art Dankers, take a seat on the panel. He's one of our key advisors in the Finance Catalyst facility of Get Invest. I'm going to sit here if you want to sit there or whatever. No, I sit next to you. You sit next to her. Okay, then I move over there. Give him a hand of applause. Okay, then little bit of housekeeping. We have a bit of we're extending a little bit. We have a bit less than an hour, so we try to keep, be short and also give some space for questions from the audience later on. But I will start with a couple of questions to you and unfolding the questions further. Let me start the sequencing here is on understanding the financial sector potential. Let's first look at what the private sector needs. What do the businesses need? What is actually their need? And what do they expect from the financial sector? What do they already get and what do they want to see more? So I think there's no other person better placed than Nati to talk about this. Nati, access to finance is often a challenge for the private sector players. So what strategies or mechanisms are currently in place already in Eswatini to facilitate easier access to finance for renewable energy in the country? And also what could be done more? Your statement, please.
Okay, Sebastian, thank you very much. Firstly, yes, I wish to confirm that I'm an ex-banker. I had to, when I met Jesus Christ, I had to quit, But secondly, firstly, just to preamble these discussions, let me begin by, some kind of anecdote. You'll be very much well aware that the esteemed gentleman sitting to my left also happens to be the president of Business Eswatini, also chairman of the Bankers Association, also CEO of Standard Bank, also husband. I think, I don't know the title he's wearing, a lot of them. But in particular, I would like to make this preamble as a human being, because I believe he was the first Liswati, anyway, that I can remember, who started driving a hybrid car in this country. And that, yes, go ahead. And at the time, it wasn't fashionable to talk about climate change, by the way. And also the cars were very, very expensive. Why would somebody put hundreds and hundreds of thousands just for a hybrid? That's many years ago, and he continues to be obsessed with this. So it is almost surreal for me that as my president, with his obsession, quiet obsession with climate, anything climate, is sitting here. One, as a financier, at this time around. At the time I'm talking about, he was still an auditor at PwC when he was doing these cars, which I didn't understand at the time. And of course, you can tell that outside here, I think the only bank that is here is Standard Bank. All I can say, go figure. That's what they do, and that's what they're passionate about. And now coming to your question is basically, what is it that the private sector would expect of financial institutions? Because I'm sure already the president is well acquainted with those questions. Firstly, the challenge with us, with the projects, by the way, and all of you may have sight of these projects. The key challenge is how do you structure a project that is viable in the current scheme of things, as it were? You must remember, a renewable energy project, it must also meet the price point of the end user, right? And I can tell you right now, and I'm saying it quietly, if there's anybody pushing an energy project, they are, every time they go to bed, they keep on praying, I wish the cost of electricity can go up. Can go up. You know why? Because increasingly justifies the project proposals. You must remember that. Consumers are willing to accept a certain price. It is usually that price, like ours here, is artificially low. Believe me, our electricity is quite cheap in this country, in large part because it's being subsidized by companies, especially. And I will then, and I wish the EEC incumbent operator was here, is we buy electricity, over 80% of it, from elsewhere. There was a price increase where they buy it, over 20% increase, wasn't it? From the wholesalers. And because we have a regulator who cares about our needs, they couldn't raise the prices by 20%. And obviously now we have a problem. Is that sustainable going forward? Maybe not. Which makes these projects even more pressing and urgent going forward. But having said that, we would expect a bank to be able to provide the financial resources and packages that will be friendly to the end price point of the project. What do I mean by that? And probably I'm asking for something totally impossible. How do you cost or charge your interest on projects of this nature? Because they're sort of longer term. How do you arrange a structured finance deal that will ensure that the project is sustainable? What kind of blending finance, mixture of commercial grants and etc. can you put together to make it viable? We're gonna need that, by the way, going forward, because I don't think right now we have a project that can just stand on its own pure on commercial rates. I don't think so, unless there is somehow invents some new technology that allows those efficiencies to occur. But right now, in essence, we need a bank that will understand. And I dare say that facilitator next to me, he's ideally poised anyway to understand what I'm talking about. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nati. I think that's extremely insightful, talking about the cost of generation, talking about the cost of finance. And I'm sort of making notes for a couple of final statements. Friendly finance, I like that term. Structuring in blending, structuring in concessional finance. Art, let's have another sort of inside story from you, because you're sitting with the businesses, you're sitting with the projects, you're advising them deeply, you're sitting in their offices, you know what their issues are when they're trying to find finance. What is your takeaway? What would you see to happen more from the financial sector? Is it that blending, or is it that structuring, or what is it? And also, what can you bring in from the experience you have in other markets? You're not only covering Eswatini, you're also active in neighboring countries.
Thank you. Thanks, Sebastian. Insights, and it's true, I exclusively work with private companies, very early stage where a concept, an idea is born all the way up to been in the business for a couple of years, trying to grow with the revenues, the profits they make, putting that back into the business, and slowly but surely growing the company, only to see after a few years that maybe companies from South Africa come in or from elsewhere that take over your market share because they are backed up with sufficient amounts of funding that you don't have or did not yet have access to, so you can't grow quickly enough. So one of the reasons of being here in Eswatini, and we started this well over a year ago, is to pick up these companies, the smaller ones, the ones that are actually operating almost 100% owned by Swazis, operated by Swazis, and not necessarily leaning on the big brother next door or from elsewhere, and helping them to get up that ladder to scale. Now, main problems obviously are access to funding. Having a bank in the country, whether it's called Standard Bank or Netbank or a pension fund, is no guarantee that you have access to that money. With all respect, you defend your money perfectly. Because when I put my money with Standard Bank, I don't want you to give it away either. So you have to protect my money that I put with you. But now I'm on the other side. I want to get some of that money back to give it to some of the companies here. And it's not easy. So having a bank is one thing. Having access to that same money is a different story. So we do look at local banks a lot. We would wish to work with local banks only to find out that the local bank access to funding is difficult. On top of that, it's expensive. Difficult / risk / expensive is almost impossible for local small companies to access that money. So we end up talking to the likes of an ElectriFI that comes in with international money in dollars or euros to fund the early stage, incubation stage, if you like, of these companies to go to a level that at some point they can knock on Standard Bank's door. Standard Bank says, "Oh, we've seen you for 7 to 10 years. This looks all solid. You've got an asset base that we can have as a collateral. So basically, if something goes wrong, they rob your company. And now you can borrow our money at still fairly high prices." But at least that is the trajectory towards using local funding. So a bank, no guarantee there is money. There is money, but accessing that money is difficult. And for the smaller companies, it's difficult to go that route in addition to doing your normal work, which is basically installing solar or developing a biomass or a hydro project. It's difficult to also spend a lot of time and money on accessing local funding. So what we do, Finance Catalyst, is actually picking up these small companies, assist them to develop their business documentation, their financial models, the data room, as we would call it, where everything comes together, help them to find the right financier, which could be, sometimes it's grants. We try to stay away from that as much as possible because we're not looking at the very early stage companies, but it's a combination of equity, it's a combination of equity plus depth to scale these companies up to a point where at some point they can knock on Standard Bank's door or Netbank or others to say, listen, we need to go into commercial finance to scale further. We're not there yet. This is a trajectory that takes a couple of years. We're in it from the EU side for the long run. We don't come and leave next year. We will be here for a couple of years, and we will support you. And next year when I sit here again, November 2021, whatever the date is going to be, we will be presenting money coming from one of the gentlemen on this platform to one of the gentlemen in the audience that is actually a successful case where funding has been closed on a company 100% Swazi owned. I promise you that.
Excellent, thanks a lot, Art. That's super helpful, and I think we're already seeing a picture here developing a little bit like it's a chain, it's a ladder, it's starting with small finance, getting in the local finance, maybe in later once you have shown actually that you have a track record. So there is already sort of, at least in my vision, sort of something emerging here in terms of learning. Before we hear from the financial sector, Standard Bank, ElectriFI, let's give the word to For on her view. For you've just done a deep analysis also on the market, on the topic here, because you're preparing and you're building up a new project here. It's a UNDP Italy project. So can you tell us a little bit sort of what's your view on the topic? What's your view on the financial sector? What are you looking at? What needs to be done? Maybe what you bring to the table? And I think you have a couple of slides which you want to show. So floor is yours.
Thanks, Sebastian. Morning, everyone. So I won't show the slides because of time, but I'll quickly go through what was in the slides. So I work for the Italy UNDP partnership, actually Italy UNDP Energy Partnership, and this is a partnership between the government of Italy, I think more specifically the Environmental Ministry, and UNDP. And it's implemented by the Rome Center, or the UNDP Rome Center. It's really a partnership to find bankable renewable energy projects in 8 countries. I have them because I always forget them. It's Algeria, Nigeria, Kenya, Rwanda, Mozambique, Zambia, Eswatini, and Comoros. And it's really, it's like I said, it's you know, the point is to find bankable, sustainable energy projects. And some parts of it, which are still being developed, will look into policy and regulatory reform, and in the hopes of also crowding in private investments. It's divided into sort of 3 phases. The current phase that we're in now is the first phase, called origination, where you have different consultants on the ground in each of these countries looking for these bankable renewable energy projects. We are also trying to extend our database to projects that aren't necessarily bankable, but we need to find partners to work with to be able to get probably project preparation funding until, you know, a point that these projects can get to a bankable stage. Then there's project finance and development, which is where we match with financiers that are available, and then the last stage is the implementation stage. We have a financier on board at the moment. It's the Italian Climate Fund, which is a fund managed by an Italian fund whose, an Italian DFI whose name I still can't pronounce, forgive me, which was established in 2022 and has been, it's now operational since October 2023. So each of the projects that we find in the different countries will really be the first batch of projects that the ICF will be financing. They have a kitty, a small kitty, of 4.2 billion euros that they need to spend over 5 years. So when we say there is money, guys, there's money. No, so it's 4.2 over the 8 countries, and hopefully that'll extend by the end of 2025. They are looking for projects with a minimum of 5 million euros, and that's just though for the Italian Climate Fund. So I guess for the purposes of the Italian Climate Fund, it's quite bigger projects. And then when we do get other funders on board, it'll be much, much smaller, I guess we'll be open to much smaller projects. They are looking to fund risk capital, so loans, guarantees and concessional loans. I think the only thing that they're not willing to do at this stage is equity. Yeah, so that's a little bit of an introduction around why I'm here, and I guess the view of the sector. I mean, I am originally from South Africa, so I came here 3 months ago in August, and I'm seeing a sector that's growing, and I'm seeing a country that's really putting in a lot of effort to putting in the proper foundations for renewable energy investments. There's a lot of also help from different organizations to catalyze investments, to also capacitate the regulators to be able to lay this foundation, and I'm seeing Skhumbuzo and team doing really good work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, so there's actually additional funding coming to the country from your side. I try to sort of take some notes, so 5 million upwards, which is probably also interesting because we heard from ElectriFI they're more sort of on the lower end, so there's also nice sort of matches and probably also handover opportunities. So it's not competition, it's really sort of joint effort sort of on the financial sector, and I'm sure you can also share some more information later on by slides or whatever, because I think it's interesting for everyone to understand this. Thanks for that. Let me move on. Vuvuzelelo. I practiced. Standard Bank. I mean, obviously, you are sort of the biggest actor here on the financial sector market. Now you see all these other activities here coming, ElectriFI, you see UNDP with the Italian government. So how does that all, how do you put that together? So where do you see the opportunity, and also what is Standard Bank already doing? And what is your proposal how to link all these different activities now to get sort of the earlier stage, the local projects, we heard about this, also the smaller ticket size, all together, and how you're going to do this in your view, also as sort of the head of the Bank Association, how do you bring all this together into a picture which works for the private sector?
Thank you, Sebastian. Good morning, colleagues. I saw His Excellency. Welcome, and thank you for joining us. I think the financial sector questions are rightly placed before us, and I think there is a role that we can play as local banks. We, as my colleague has already said, we secure customer deposits. That's very important to us because we sell trust. When you put your money in a bank, you want to know that you can find it. That's why you find it not easy to access facilities with a bank, particularly if you're coming in with an innovative product. But what we also do is that we do collaborate with DFIs. We do collaborate with other governments. So you are not going to get money from Italy into your mattress. You will get it through a bank. So we facilitate flows of liquidity in the country. That is also our other role. So what we can do, and we've already been discussing this with the partners, is that maybe some of the structures we can create is, to the extent that there are projects for Eswatini that are looking for funding from Europe and all the finances that are available, we can structure products where those facilities are made available through a local bank. And the advantage of that is that we are on the ground, right? We can see the revenues come through. We can make sure that those loans are paid back, because all these are loans, they have to be paid back. But they all look for viable projects. So being on the ground, we have the advantage of seeing a project and assessing and updating the finances from day one right until the revenues start to flow. And we do the collections for you and remit those funds on a regular basis, whether monthly or quarterly or annually. So I think that as local banks, we have a role to play. But at the same time, we also do have our own appetite in terms of certain developments that we're keen on financing. We have term sheets out already to some of the local entities that are looking at developing biomass projects in excess of 2 billion from Eswatini. So we do also partner with local pension funds for projects that are larger. So there is appetite. What we generally don't have appetite for as banks is innovative new products, because unless it's been proven, I can't trust that product with depositors' funds, because at the end of the day, that person that deposited that money in the bank, they need it back, and I can't then risk it with something that I've also not seen work elsewhere. But to the extent that your project, whether you want to buy solar panels or financing a lot of solar panels in the country, small hydro, we're looking at another hydro project for EEC. So the run-of-the-mill stuff that's known and been proven, we're partnering already with my other DFIs to ensure that we can put funding behind them. So we are actively playing in this field. We are the largest bank, that is Standard Bank now, in Africa. And part of that is the work that we're doing on the continent. There are 600 million people in Africa that do not have access to electricity. This is real for us. And people look up to us. We get accused for so many things in non-green energy spaces. But the development of Africa sits with us here to ensure that we can take the continent to the next level. So we are very, very open-minded. We are willing to partner with anyone that's bringing in resources and fund for them, and also work with them and risk participate with them, depending on whatever structure that works for them.
Thank you very much. A couple of things sort of we pre-discussed yesterday. We had actually a good chat here in the evening. So local currency, for example, that's something you can provide, which is extremely helpful. We have, you probably have noticed, we were actually planning to have another person on the panel from the National Pension Fund. Thanks for mentioning the pension fund, because that's another sort of number in the equation. So it's sort of, if I summarize what I understand from you, it's yes. It's trust. You need to understand the projects. They need to trust you, and you are very close on the ground. So you know how to vet them. You know how to assess them. At the same time, you are a commercial bank, so you're not the ones in taking early stage risks. So you rather leave that to the development finance institutions, which can bring in blended finance, concessional finance, what other structures they provide, which I think, in my opinion, this can be controversial, but in my opinion, this is also where the risk should sit. This is what the development funding is for, to take additional risks, not take the risk which can be done by sort of a standard bank or others. Yeah, that's the commercial finance which will grow, but we need to look at the sort of the growing areas, the risk taking. This is a risky statement here now, because I don't want to tell everyone, okay, just go to the development finance institution, they take all the risks, no problem. But they should have the structuring opportunities to support you also as a commercial financier to structure the risk properly. So it's about structuring, it's about blending, it's about putting the right thing together. So that's my sort of summary of what I hear from you, plus being on the ground, having local currency finance, of course, an important topic. With that, handing over to sort of last but not least, Corentin. We heard you already before, so that's why I thought, okay, you're the last one on the panel here, but I think similar important to the equation, because maybe you are exactly sort of the partner here in the room which can close also some of the gaps and which can help early stage, more innovative. But tell us, what's your view on this? Maybe also share some examples, as you did already, sort of how you developed new financial markets also maybe in other countries.
Thank you very much. So I took a lot of notes. Maybe coming back to the initial question on what private sector needs from financial organizations, I think from an entrepreneur's point of view or private company, it's very important for them that they understand what is the path to access to capital, what is the ecosystem in place, because it's usually so vague for them that it's very complicated. And so that's why we need capacity builders, technical assistants, organizations like Get Invest, helping them to get investment ready. I think that's really important. Also, hearing what some of my colleagues are saying, I fully agree that it's a sort of ladder. There are multiple organizations in the financial sector that can support. We do not invest at the same stage, as I was explaining in my speech. We are complementary, but that's all in an ideal world. What we see in practice is still very different. And I would like to see this collaboration happening much more. What we see now on the ground is that we take more risk by investing in renewable energy projects, and I don't think we have had very few co-investments with local financiers or local banks in many other countries in Africa. Why? Because the requirements from, and I'm not speaking about Standard Bank here, don't get me wrong, sir, but what we're seeing is that the requirements are still very out of the ground realities on the collateral side, etc. So there's still a huge gap that needs to be filled, and organizations like ElectriFI can't do it all. And so what should we do then? I think that's only my humble opinion, but from what I'm seeing from years of investment on the ground is that this risk appetite that we're talking about, first there is really conscious that needs to evolve on this risk appetite. The biggest risk that we face is that we're running out of time. Latest news that we read in the newspaper lately is that we might be actually past to the point to reverse, like climate urgency. So this is the biggest risk for our future generations. And I think we should have that on the paper, stick to our fridge or wherever, to keep that in mind all the time. So this risk that we're talking about is actually the climate risk. And if we look at it not in a dooming scenario, but more in an opportunity, that's where we can find the biggest and the most effective collaboration. And practically, what does that mean? I think, first of all, from the legal point of view, the framework needs to be in place, so there is a role to be played by the public authorities to encourage, to put a framework in place to encourage investments in the private sector, so that it's easier for local banks or foreign investors to do direct investments on the governance side, etc., on the tariff regulation. All these aspects very important. There is still a lot of education to be done. That's the purpose of this forum today. And that we see also some proven concepts that are actually working and to highlight them. So yeah, that's a bit what I wanted to share on that. Thank you.
Yes, please, yeah, absolutely. I was just going to open the floor. Also, please feel free to react. I have a question prepared, but it's even better if you start into a conversation. Also, in a sort of, let's do a first round here on the panel, and then also open for questions from the audience. Grab the mic, go ahead, and then I think, Art, you also had something.
I'll probably say.
And then, Nati, sorry. Yeah,
Okay.
I think it's my turn.
Okay. Ladies.
Okay.
Four.
Yeah, ladies first.
Ladies first. Excellent. Yeah. Walk the talk, Nati. So you go first, Nati, Art, and then we'll see how
it looks like I'm using my pretty lady advantage here. So I think to add on to what you were saying, Quarantine, what you were saying, when people keep saying, and I said it before, that there's money abound, it is abound. It's just, it needs to be unlocked, which is where the role of DFIs come in, like you said, Sebastian. And it's a balancing act between social goals and kind of getting the likes of Standard Bank from a private sector perspective incentivized. I'm also an ex-banker, also an ex-Standard banker, so I do understand how the banking world thinks. I read an example around how sort of this unlocking worked a couple of years ago in Kazakhstan. And it was a situation where, the ministry, public sector declared they wanted to increase their mix of renewable energy within the electricity sector more than anything. And, but they didn't know how to go about it, right? So one of the things that eventually when they went through this process happened is between 2015 and 2020, they increased their renewable energy mix or renewable energy capacity within the country by 6 times, right, within 5 years. And this really was due to sort of catalytic capital from the DFIs. They had the Climate Investment Fund that came in, which sort of with the IFC offered concessional funding. And at the beginning of the process, the concessional funding was not loans and debt to borrow to the projects, it was more capacity building and grants. They did that for a nice couple of years where they were confident that the regulator can produce the proper energy laws to allow the private sector to participate. And things that some people take for granted around announcing or getting to a point where you have acceptable feed-in tariffs, for example, for renewable energy projects. And this, for me, sort of laid the groundwork for collaboration, right? And then, came to a point where the same Climate Investment Fund then offered long-term funding, which is what a lot of private or commercial banks struggle with, especially at the beginning, for a solar PV. And by that action, attracted around 200 million more from multinational development banks. They attracted also 400 million more, I think, from the private sector. And for me, the point of this was just really around, answering the question, what does the private sector, from a financial sector perspective, want? And more than anything, they need certainty and predictability. If you can give them that, you have money, right? And unfortunately, this boils down to a lot of complexities to get that certainty and predictability. That also comes in from, getting, at the very beginning of the process, getting buy-in from stakeholders. And stakeholders is everyone. If nobody in your country believes in renewable energy, you can't force it on people. And chances are the market will probably not going to develop as much as you want. We've talked about capacity building and clear policy framework. And I think one thing also that I see, and not necessarily that it's not there, but when people talk about access to finance, the one thing that they probably don't mention as much is, you can have the DFIs and the complex financial structures, etc. But there's also an amount of entrepreneurial flair that's needed, right? So you need the entrepreneurs to attract the bank. And sometimes it becomes a question of, you believing in your business and you providing a business case that works, that actually will convince the financiers to take the risk on you, where you think maybe the risk won't be taken, right? And one thing I was told yesterday that I also remember from my banking days is present a bankable PPA, you're good to go. Because that means you've done the groundwork, you've done the policy work, you've done the work on ensuring predictability, etc. And if you produce that one document, then you're good to go. Am I lying?
Well, I've decided to agree with everything that you just said. In particular, when you mentioned the 5 million euros, I just looked at you. I think you are just adorable. But it is very, very important to us, and I'll tell you for many reasons. Access to finance, the risk appetite of this country in general. We need that backup. Our financial institutions and their shareholders' expectations is that there is a certain amount of risk they cannot take. And we need those instruments either to back up that kind of risk. In fact, as you're busy talking, as I wonder if we don't have the sophisticated instruments like credit default swaps in case a project cannot pay, and then somebody else can hedge that in order to try to mitigate the inherent credit risk on some of these projects. But I can tell you right now, the whole region here is energy starved, and the appetite for energy is almost totally insatiable. That's a given. The key thing is at what price. And I think that's what we need to really get a handle on. That there is a market for these projects, it's totally indisputable. I think we are all in agreement with that. But how we get it at the right price, it's so. If agencies like this can work very in collaboration with the financial institutions here, I think then we have a chance of going forward. There's a number of these projects already being formulated here, waiting we're in front of the regulator's desk, and financing will become a critical component of them. And you mentioned the 5 million. Please, let's get together and see how we can really. Okay, I didn't mean get together, but I'm just saying. How we can jointly help advance this situation going forward. And another thing which is very important, just in case we've got 10 minutes before lunch, is you must remember this is the country's policy. I said it yesterday, this government wants to remove over 1 million metric tons of greenhouse gases from this, and they said they will do that via renewable energy. Our energy mix, the 50-50, it's a stated policy, and they said the private sector have to drive these projects forward. But all we're doing here is actually partnering with the country's ambition to get to that goal by 2030, removing over 1 million metric tons of greenhouse gases from the air. And I think it's a good thing. And again, remember, in COP26, we decided voluntarily, as part of our NDCs, the nationally determined contribution, we nailed our colors to the mast and said this is what we're going to do, and the world is going to hold our feet to the fire, hold us accountable for those results. And I think it just behooves us now to try to expedite our actions henceforth. I just want to say that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nadi. We take you by the word there. I think the NDCs, important topic. We're not going to delve into details here, but yes, you have decided also as a country to really move that way. So now it's about how to get there. Art, you had a comment. Are you talking about above or 5 or below 5 million, which seems to be the magic word now?
I'll talk about a real deal. I didn't meet Jesus like some of the people on the panel. But I did have a WhatsApp communication. I do have a WhatsApp communication with the divine, and this morning I did get the WhatsApp, and it all became clear to me. The fog disappeared, and here's my proposition. Can I ask Marius and Faith to come forward, please? Faith, EEP, yes? Yeah, you. Don't look so confused.
We did not rehearse for this.
No, this is not rehearsed. I'm doing this completely out of the blue
that's fine.
because of my divine intervention.
We want to be
coming.
He sounds like a prosperity pastor now.
You did your surprise, I've got mine.
We want to break down the
I'd like to show my
silos.
commitment first. See, I'm with Standard Bank. Yeah.
So let's do this.
That you do that before you ask anything, right? You show commitment. Faith, please.
Breaking down the silos, please. Yeah, just
Marius.
join.
Okay, we all talk
in
about
front.
there's investments, there's Swazi companies, there is renewable energy. There is a sector within the renewable energy that makes commercial sense. We're all aware of that. That's the CNI, or what is called commercial and industrial installations. Simply translated as rooftop solar. You put it on the roofs, you have an inverter, you translate to electricity, you flip the switch, you don't even know it's EEC or solar, right? If you want it at night, you put batteries. Simple, it doesn't get more complicated than that. One of the companies in doing that in Swaziland is Simply Swazi. They pitched yesterday as part of the Alliance for Rural Electrification Investment Academy, had an excellent pitch, and basically they got a business case worthwhile investing in. So now I'm looking at the panel here, and I'm looking at Faith, I'm thinking, everybody is here. Why wait for everybody to go home, have email communications and Zoom calls, and you name it? Let's put the deal together right now, and I'm not saying you need to commit to it. I'll be the gopher running around between all of you, making this transaction happen, but I think we've got the ingredients right here. There we are. The gentleman needs, let me just summarize that first. The gentleman needs a little bit of money, about €500,000 or 10 million in Malangeni, to actually develop the company further as, let's say, develop a portfolio, develop order book, develop the company capacity, call centers, everything necessary to make sure that if he puts out solar, it works, and if it doesn't work, you get the sales service that you expect from a professional company. For that, we would need about $500,000 grant money. I'm looking at the Energy and Environment Partnership. You haven't done anything in Eswatini, and you're opening up shop again in February next year. Do expect an application to come from Simply Swazi. We will assist with putting it together in a professional way, so you don't have to hesitate to just say yes. Don't commit now, but it's coming, right? Yeah, it will be coming. Then, when that is in place, and in parallel, we're going to work with ElectriFI, with the gentleman on the right, for about €1.5 million to €2 million, or for 30 to 40 million in Malangeni, as part of a working capital facility, so that the order book that this gentleman has, which is about 15 megawatts, can be actually rolled out and implemented. I do know that you only can do 50% of a total working capital facility, so here we go, sir. The other 50%, about 40 million in Malangeni, can we sit with you, work through your terms and conditions? We're not asking for favors, we're asking for access. Work with you to put this package together. Here we go.
Excellent, Art. Thank you very much for that intervention. This is really how the finance catalyst works. This is really sort of bringing people together, bringing them on the table, and making things happen. Again, this was not planned, so thanks for the intervention. Very good. And absolutely. Excellent. But what it also tells me, I mean, I took some notes earlier in the panel. I heard words like trust, predictability, convince, friendly finance. So, you know, everyone talks about numbers and figures and everything, but this is also a people's business. Yeah. I mean, if you want to do finance, you need to trust. You need to be willing to put also skin in the game as a developer. So this is in the end. After, you know, all the number crunching is done, also the groundwork needs to be done. You need your PPA, you need everything, you need the solid case. But in the end, and that's also my takeaway being an ex-banker a long time ago, is really, in the end, it needs to be sort of the people business. You need to have the feeling this guy are going to pull it off. And I think we had an excellent example here, so thanks for that, Art. So I'm looking at the time, so we still have a couple of more minutes. I mean, this would be an excellent closing, but we still have, I think, 5 or 10 minutes. For some questions from the audience, if there's any.
Anyone else with a deal?
Yeah. Okay, now our hands are going up. I don't have my glasses. Can I actually ask the moderator to sort of... Louis, you had I think you had your hand up first, but maybe it's only because you're sitting in front. Over there. And maybe also tell us sort of who you want to...
Yes, thank you. So good morning, everyone. Luis from the European Union delegation. Thank you so much for this. My question, it's more directed to Corentin and also Ad, and maybe Sebastian, you can also come into you. I want to talk about default and how the organizations you work with, because talk about risk appetite, you can take more risk than the commercial banks. But how do your organization see default as a good thing, in the sense, okay, you made this investment, you took the risk that you are supposed to take, that other organizations cannot take, and so you are doing your job, taking the risk that you need. Do you measure this? Do you see this as a good thing? Or if you are doing your job and everything goes smoothly, the organizations say that you are doing a good job? Thank you.
I leave that to Corentin and Art, please.
Well, I think first of all, acceptance of failure is very cultural, and we can see that, you know, it's very different how people react to it from country to country, from continent to continent. We still have a lot of work to do when it comes to entrepreneurship. When you compare with Americans, for example, they really have the culture about, oh, you failed 5 businesses, that's good. And up to the next one. So I think there's still a bit of catch-up to be done there. But on the ElectriFI side, it's really part of our mandate. So we exist to take more risk. And that is also accepted. That being said, we try to have a lot of mitigants in our assessment to make sure, as I mentioned, that the project is commercially viable, because we understand the risk, etc., but we want to create impact at the end of the day. And I'm a strong believer that impact can only be created with strong businesses. And so that's why we will spend most of our time on really building strong organizations, but also while accepting that there is a risk that it might fail. So I think for us, it's part of our investment mandates. Yeah.
Well, I'm not exactly the investor as ElectriFI is, but what I would see default in my line of business, where we bring, you know, you just saw a deal making. This might not, you know, this is going to work, but you have some of these deals that might not work. So you have a plan B and a plan C. I've been 30 years in Africa doing this. There is no one deal that always works. You always have your plan B, plan C. That for me would be the default. You fall, you get up, you try to do better, or you fall, and as you're busy falling, you already know you got a parallel plan B going to make sure that you don't fall all the way. So that is what we protect our customers, our clients for as well. Let's make sure we have that plan B. For example, tomorrow morning I'm having a meeting with UNDP, just in case. That's my plan B. We just set that up right here. So the plan Bs need to be there. And that goes for the individual customers, clients. Everybody that runs a company knows there is not one solution, and you will fail. You have to get up and do it again and do better. As you were saying, in the States, it's normal. You fall flat on your face, learn from it, move on. I think that attitude, that way of doing business, people that are practical, they know that after failing, they need to get up and do better next time. Don't expect to be perfect from day one. Also, another message here, perfection doesn't exist. Good enough is what we work with.
Briefly add to this, Art, in Get Invest now, we are also adding another service called post-investment support, because we see that some of the companies and clients of the Finance Catalyst, they are struggling because of also external factors. You know, we had COVID, we have war in the world, you know, we have inflation. So we are adding a post-investment support where we can actually help in restructuring or also finding additional financing sources, so that we are reacting to this already, because there's always a need of adjustments. I think one or two questions we can, I'm looking at the Master of Ceremony. Yes, we do have a bit more time.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the presentations and the discussions. My question is, what role do you think the central banks should play in this investment in rural energy projects, by making perhaps preferential funding available that the commercial retail banks can disperse? Because I think our central bank is toying with the idea, and I'm just wondering, would that stimulate the market? Would that make more money, cheaper money available, rather than taking more expensive commercial money? So yes, the role of central banks. Thank you.
This goes to either Nati or Buzelelo. It's your call, huh?
Yeah, they can play multiple roles. We should just remember, central bank is the bankers' banks. So we banks bank with the central bank, because you cannot bank with the central bank. But on the back of that, they can provide, we already have a structure for a guarantee scheme that they provide. So if you're borrowing up to 3 million emalangeni as a loan, they are willing to underwrite that as security. So don't demand security from that customer. They will secure it and allow you to go and operate. But I mean, the other thing that they can play another role is access to concessional funding, you know, through the World Bank, IMF, and all those sort of institutions. They are able to get those funding through that. They can house those funds, and we can then make them available to the local market through, obviously, agreed means. So they can play an active role in a way. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So this is, I mean, one of the takeaways. I'm trying to sort of note down a couple of takeaways. Really move the risk where it's ideally hosted. So in this case, you know, if they're able to attract finance from Green Climate Fund, whatever, use that to allocate some of the risks to make it more palatable to Standard Bank or to some of the other local banks. Yeah. So that's the role of the central bank. There's more questions over there. Yes, please. So I have to get my glasses out.
So I guess my question maybe would be directed to Standard Bank and maybe UNDP. But there was a lot of conversation around consistency and a kind of certainty and predictability in the modeling that is done for, let's say, renewable energy projects. So I think one of the key considerations here would have to be a sort of de-risking framework. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, if there isn't some level of predictability in how we model new solutions, particularly in that case, let's take, for instance, Eswatini. Eswatini is a middle-class economy. Most of the people who work in this economy, middle class. And then you have a high risk factor for their ability to be able to pay back. Would you say that this high level of risk that's based on these projects factors in the need for innovation, particularly in capital markets and their stimulation?
Thanks for the question. So I'm thinking about it in terms of an example, right? And it goes back to the role of central banks, but in my head more again MDBs and DFIs. If you, for example, have a power purchase agreement, right, which is, I think everyone knows what a power purchase agreement is, and the duration of the power purchase agreement is 10 years, right? You approach Standard Bank to say, can I have a loan for 10 years for this solar system that I'm trying to implement? Standard Bank says to you, I can give you a loan, but I can only go up to 5 years. And this comes back to sort of their sources of funds being mismatched with the use of funds, right? So a DFI can come in and actually de-risk the transaction. They can come and say, okay, I'll talk to Standard Bank to make this possible. As a DFI, I will guarantee the last 5 years that you can't finance, right? And that guarantee can come in different ways. If the PPA was to sell electricity, and a borrower can't buy the electricity for the last 5 years, the DFI will say, I will buy that electricity for the amount that is outstanding for the 5 years, right? And it's an example of how, a development finance institution can partner up with a commercial institution to try and innovate how they can de-risk a certain transaction. So definitely always a level of partnership between those that are mandated to take on risks, such as DFIs, and those that, in my opinion, commercial banks are the catalyst that always makes things happen. So if that partnership comes together to try and think of such solutions, definitely renewable energy investments will go far.
And just to add on that, as a bank, when your project has passed through credit and credit approved by Standard Bank, you don't worry where the money is going to come from, because we're going to get it for you. Because behind us, we have all the DFIs in the world that have cash that's available for lending. So we know which entity has what liquidity for what type of project. So if you have a 25-year power purchase agreement and you need a 25-year loan, no commercial bank will give you 25-year money, but we will get you 25-year money. So you don't have to worry about that. Just bring the project to us, get it approved through credit, have a proper power purchase agreement. If you pass those stages, we will get you the money. It doesn't matter how much it is.
This is a nice confirmation that there is money available. We just need to make it available to the projects. We have a couple of minutes left. If you allow, I would rather sort of skip the last round from your side and rather take a bit more time for one or two additional questions, yeah? And then I do a very brief sort of summary in the end. So there's space for two more questions. One over here, and I think there was a second one, but yeah, why don't you? Okay. So you were first, or yeah, whoever. Yeah, okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Marcelino, and I'm Managing Director of Lighthouse Africa Investment. And I'm pleased to hear the comments or answers from the team from Standard Bank. I'm starting to get excited now because I've been trying to get some credits or funding through Standard Bank for almost a year now, and I'm failing. Every time I submit a project or documents, and they are saying, go back to your accountant, supply us with this and that. By the minute I'm putting more money, spending on preparing cash flow projection, business plan, directors' assets, I don't know what else, is already in 50,000 rounds, and I'm still waiting for the answer. So what I did this year, I was in South Africa for a conference in Durban Energy. I visited some exposition, and I met a certain company that is one of the 9 companies that has been selected by Standard Bank South Africa, Green Department Energy, to install all projects of their clients in South Africa. This company has done 90 megawatts in total from rooftop, commercial, parking lots, and all that. And I just signed an MOU with them, and I said, can you fund my clients in Swaziland, which means they have to cross the border and stamp a passport and they fill some other forms, even maybe pay import duties to bring the equipment here. So, and we signed an agreement. I got an NDA signed. I got 6 clients. 1 client, the project is designed, the soon, and guess what happened? Standard Bank South Africa had to call Swaziland Standard Bank, receive one client for interview and request his business plan, cash flow projects and all. I'm just admiring this situation. It's really amazing. How can a Standard Bank South Africa send a client of Swaziland to see Standard Bank Swaziland? It's confusing. But they're going to fund this client.
So what's the question then?
The question is, what is Standard Bank doing to support local project, local business people like me who just starting to earn some cash to feed my family, bring a bread at home? If I have to supply 1,000 of paperwork before I qualify I'm not asking to give money to me. Give the client the money.
Statement on that, or?
Okay, give the client the money. The same money that is paying EEC, 56 or 90,000, is going to pay Standard Bank. And Standard Bank is rushing for people who want to buy cars, vehicles.
Okay, but sorry, I mean, we're discussing general financial sector,
okay,
so we don't want to put the Standard Bank here on the spot.
This is my question. This is my question.
This is your question, maybe.
Thank you. I can easily wreck my car in 5 minutes out there, but the solar panel on the rooftop, the chance of wrecking it, it's
Thank you for that.
not easy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ayakhokho manyeva bekunene sibuya khona esibayeni. It's allowed to express your frustration, and I must admit that we can be frustrating as banks, and I've been on the other side of the fence where I've been on a customer and needing finance and being frustrated by how to eventually get to it. The understanding of entrepreneurs is not going to exist amongst all our staff. And I think that is the primary thing that we all need to understand. If you think like an entrepreneur and you meet a teller at a bank and ask them a question, you will not get the type of answer that you're looking for. So I would advise you to, during lunch, just step aside and have a conversation with me, and let's see what we can get out of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. I won't keep you long from your lunch. In the interest of transparency, I have to follow the example of others and say I too was a banker. A long, long time ago, but now I'm the British High Commissioner in Eswatini. I don't really have a question, but I just wanted to express my delight, actually, at the passion and energy that we've heard this morning. Unfortunately, I missed yesterday's session. I hope it was as passionate and energetic as this one. I've been here 2.5 years, and I've spent most of that time advocating, if you like, my ambition for this country, which is to be the first in Africa that is entirely independent for its energy needs based on renewables. And the official target is half of that. And that's great. And it's fantastic that there are private sector players looking to provide that 50%. But I think there's so much more that could be done. And clearly today there are many of you here committed to doing more. Obviously there are barriers, not just about finance, although perhaps in that context I can just add that UK Export Finance, our Export Credit Guarantee Department, has a cover limit of £750 million sterling for Eswatini alone. They can go down as low to a project of maybe 250,000. Yes, there has to be UK content, but only maybe 20 to 30%. They can work with other export credit guarantee organizations. They will work with the commercial banker. As the president and CEO has said, they'll find you the cover. UK Export Finance doesn't provide finance, it provides a guarantee against the UK sovereign. So your interest is at a discount, And most importantly, perhaps, for these kind of projects, the term can be 18 years, plus 2 years of installation. So there's huge opportunity out there. You, the entrepreneurs, the operators, are keen to move forward. I think the country offers huge potential, and not just to satisfy the 247 megawatt peak demand. I mean, that should have been done yesterday. I firmly believe that this country has a huge opportunity on the basis of investment and provision of renewable energy to generate economic growth that you've never seen before. It's not just the comparative advantage, perhaps over neighboring countries, but that's a significant factor. It's about generating economic growth. And there are not just investors in the energy sector, but investors full stop around the world who will be absolutely delighted to set up a manufacturing or processing plant in a country where they can say, our products are entirely green. So thank you very much to the panel. Thank you, all of you, for being part of what I think is a really exciting and visionary process. But let's do it sooner than yesterday. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for that input, and I think with that I don't want to hold you longer before lunch. Just give me 2 minutes to try to wrap up, but I have to say it was such an intense discussion, so many different aspects in there, it's difficult to wrap up. I just try to note down 2 or 3 sort of main takeaways here. And yeah, there will be more, but we can discuss over lunch. So it is right, risk allocation is a topic which came up quite often here, and risk allocation then also requires structuring the risk. You know, where do you bring the DFI guarantees in? Where do you structure other funding sources in? How do you bring that together? Where does ElectriFI start? When does Standard Bank come in? When is local currency finance? So it's about the right risk allocation, because this is what finance is about. It's about risk, and risk costs money, so you need to allocate it right. And so this is the job of the financial sector, in my opinion, to really structure this and to be able to do this properly. And I think this has become quite clear here. Collaboration is a key, because we have different funding sources here. We heard more now from the UK. There is other guarantee funds, export credit agencies, everything is available, so it has to be put together. Collaboration is important, and with this collaboration it's also possible then to climb the ladder for the smaller companies, different financing stages to really grow and scale. So that's sort of the collaboration is definitely a takeaway here. Predictability was mentioned quite often. This is, I think, a message also towards government. Long-term planning must be possible. Power purchase agreements, obviously, predictability is key to make things happen. Another point which came up was really the unlocking, because there is potential there is demand, there's entrepreneurs here, so it's unlocking knowledge, it's unlocking expertise. But on both sides, I would say we work a lot with the projects. Art is a good example. Also, what we saw here. Thanks for arranging that. But also on the banker side, on the financier side, and I think that was a good example. It depends on which loan officer you're talking to. Do they understand the asset class? Do they know what a solar panel is about? Do they know how to assess the risk? And I think that is also part of the equation. So the unlocking knowledge also on the financial sector side. And I mentioned this morning, also from Get Invest side, we're going to start a project on that next year. And the last point, at least from my side, is it's the human factor as well. It's trust, it's collaboration, and I think this is a country which is greatly placed for this, because of the meetings I have here, sort of the friendliness, the collaboration here, the cooperation, breaking down the silos. So I think you're in a perfect situation to really also develop this trust among each other, among the financiers with the projects, to move this forward. So with that, and I'm sure I forgot a couple of additional takeaways, but please feel free to correct me over lunch. With that, I'm closing the panel, and I'm thanking you for a great discussion. Thanks for that.